into shadows, uncovering the light. Guests with solid minds, no tales of the strange. In Sasquatch Secrets, they'll begin to rearrange. Truth, the vibe, we're on a quest. Look beyond the trees, what do you see? Factual stories redefining history. No myths, no magic, let's break the mold. With every word spoken, the wonders unfold. Footprints in the snow, not just a myth. Data and research will sift through the pith. Tales of a creature, but science leads the way. Nikki's quest for knowledge, come join and stay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sasquatch Secrets. I'm your host, Nikki Cologne, and this is the show where we slow things down and we ask harder questions about, what we want to believe from what the evidence actually says. Tonight, we're stepping back away from stories of glowing eyes and portals and cloaking Bigfoot. And we're looking straight down at the ground at footprints. So for decades, thousands of alleged Sasquatch footprints have been collected across North America. Most people see them as a curiosity piece, cool photos or campfire stories, or hoax bait. But one scientist looked at those same prints and asked a very different question. What if we treat these like biological data instead of folklore? That scientist was Dr. Henner Fahrenbach. Fahrenbach wasn't trying to prove Bigfoot with blurry photos or eyewitness accounts. He applied statistical analysis, biological scaling laws, and population models. The same tools used to study known animals. He measured footprint lengths, widths, pressure ridges, stride patterns, and distribution curves. Then he asked, do these numbers behave like real animal populations or like random human fakery? His conclusions were controversial, compelling, and still debated today. So tonight we're not asking, do you believe in Bigfoot? We're asking something much harder. What can data actually tell us, and what does it stop telling the truth? So please help me welcome my guest tonight, the Squatch detective himself, Steve Culls from Squatch Detective, Squatch DTV. Let's bring him on.
Pushing daisies from my face.
Hello.
I gotta censor myself. I can't say the next lyric.
Yeah, nope. We have to limit it to that little piece there. But welcome. How are you doing, Steve?
I am doing well. The sciatica, the cloud of sciatica is slowly starting to lift, and I'm starting to ambulate like a normal human being again.
Oh, great. That's good news. I mean, we're all getting up in age there. And I know a lot of us are dealing with, a lot of health issues.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody out there is doing well. And
I keep telling my kids, don't get old. That's you want my advice? Don't get old. Forget the birthday.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
It just happens. It just happens.
Yep.
But hello to everybody in the chat. We see you over there, Sharon and Jen, and the normal characters are here in the house. I saw Squatching Wizard, Jonathan out there, and who else do we see? Henry May. I see you.
Henry.
And yep, he good at. I also saw Where is he? Jerry. I saw Jerry, the Buckwas crew, kind of jump in there a little earlier. Robert Denduven, of course. Sandra Piper. Who else I saw? Oh, Lazy Cowboy. Ed's here somewhere.
Good deal.
He's
Good deal.
probably almost fallen asleep. It's got to be late over there. So anyway, welcome all of you guys and everybody else who's here to join us this evening, because tonight I'm going to move us around like this.
Whoop.
We are going to talk about Dr. Henner Fahrenbach's Sasquatch numbers. And there's a lot of information about Dr. Fahrenbach. You know, he conducted these extensive statistical analysis on footprints measurements, and they were collected over decades, and mostly the Western U.S. and Canada, and a lot of that coming from the Harrison area, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I believe he took a lot of his stuff from John Green's database.
Right. He was a zoologist, a biomedical research scientist, and he was involved with the Oregon Regional Primate Center?
Yep.
Something like that. So he was quite involved in, on that educational side of biology, and which is what our field really needed. I mean, of course, we did have Jeffrey Meldrum, Dr. Meldrum, and Grover Krantz, who was another person who was also involved in footprints.
And one we often forget is Dr. Leroy Fish.
Who you don't hear about, often at all. I have heard the name, but I don't know much about him at all.
No, he was a wildlife biologist.
Who was the other one that was? I remember seeing his face too. Now I'll think about it later. But he lived till he was 93. I had no idea he was up in age and passed in Apache Junction, Arizona. I was like, oh.
Yeah, he was old when I interviewed him, and that was back in like 2007.
Oh, wow. Because that was going to be, I thought you had interviewed him, but I wasn't sure if it was where you met up with him and did an interview, or if he was on your show.
No, I've never met him in person, but he was on when we were doing Squatch Detective Radio way back in the day on Blog Talk Radio.
Oh, okay.
And it was like I had my list, and I got a lot of the people I wanted done really quick, like John Green and Henner Fahrenbach. I believe they were within a month of each other.
Uh-huh.
And Henner had a great sense of humor, and of course he had the German accent through him, and it was very entertaining interview, but very eye-opening, very inspiring to those who embrace the scientific side of things. Like he was bringing real data to our mystery.
Right. Yeah, he had that statistical type modeling. And he was very good at public speaking, and, he was seen in several documentaries, and he was, used as part of that community, used for, getting out there and advertising the Bigfoot field, and as a expert, they would deem as an expert in a lot of these documentaries and stuff like that. But the questions that I wanted to bring up were actually brought to me by Relic Hominin, who we know Patrick, okay, who's very, very, and I want to give him credit for the making of this show, okay, because about a year ago, he sent me an email in regards to things he was thinking about in footprints. And I'm like, wow, that's really, would make a really great show. And, he gave me carte blanche to, do whatever I wanted with his ideas. And some of his ideas were centered around, why aren't Bigfoot prints considered serious evidence by the scientific community? And what tools do we have to actually distinguish the real from the fake? Which, lends to kind of my end of the show. And I'm like, that's really good take. That's a really good lead in to other conversations and other questions, because that's what we're about, right? We need to ask better questions, because that's how we get further down the field. So, so to say, but, are we trying to identify, different types, different species of Bigfoot? Because, those were some of the questions that were out there. Why do we have such a wide range of different types of prints that are showing up? And some of the experts, such as maybe Krantz, Meldrum, Barackman, they hold a very strong place in the community, and we look up to them and their opinions about footprints. But in some instances, they all kind of invested some of their, they liked the Paul Freeman stuff. They backed a lot of the Paul Freeman stuff, and there's been a lot of controversy involving that. But we also know that, say, what's the other track? The London tracks, Barackman, that was another big thing that had come out. And wasn't it Barackman himself who said they ended up being fake?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so.
I have the actual, this was his study right here, the Sasquatch Statistics, the Fahrenbach findings. And we'll get to the London stuff near the end there. But, those are some of the questions, is how are we actually looking at footprints and determining whether they are real or fake? And because we're making a little bit of assumptions with that,
Sure.
This is
absolutely
what we think this is, and how it looks, and is there movement, which is another good thing, because that's one way to totally determine if we've got a movement in that foot. That if it's a living creature, it's got to have that movement in the foot and not that flat stamp.
Which is a lot of times it's difficult to do that with just a cast alone. You actually need to see the actual impression that was made, because that's where you get to see the leaf litter going in a direction,
right?
And that's the huge part of it. You need to, where's where is this impression? That's
right. And it's funny because online you will see lots of people posting prints, because it's the easiest thing to show. And you find this perfect little print with all the leaf litter around, but that's not natural. The leaf litter would be in the print. It wouldn't be cleared out, perfect, and then a print.
right.
And it's like, well, did you clean that print out? Is that what you did? What did you do to have that? No, this is how I found it. Or, it's just perfect, one perfect print out there. And I have a harder time with the one print theory, just finding the one, because I think there are more prints. We just can't see them. They're not, they tend not to be more defined as maybe one that stepped in the mud or softer soil. And then,
or even foot position it, if it's making a turn somewhere, it could twist, it could only capture part of the foot.
But we've all been to the beach, and when you step into the sand, there is kickoff. There's movement. The soil goes off into the sides, and the toes dig in, and that's a normal thing that happens. It's not like we're looking for a perfectly formed foot is kind of rare. I mean, even perfect bear prints are really, hard to find because of that issue of how they're stepping and on what they're stepping, and maybe the possible double print that happens to make them even look bigger. But we've all seen the photos out there of bear prints that are like that huge, And if you saw those big old toes, that would be something to really take you aback and say, whoa, is that a Bigfoot?
Yeah, one of the most confused print is the bear double step, where you have the bear make a step and then its back paw comes into it, and
those are big. Those are huge.
That looks like a grizzly there, not a black bear. It looks like a grizzly just by the terrain in the background. It looks like it's kind of out into the west a bit, Rockies but black bear are a little bit smaller than that. But the one thing about black bear tracks, especially, is that their claws don't always capture.
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes you won't see the claw marks in them all the time. And I remember it was back in, I want to say 2010, and I was brought to Middle New York with this guy was saying, hey, I have found these tracks on the shores of the Black River every morning. So we went out one day, we interviewed him, and then we went out and we went down to the area of the Black River, and sure enough, here's this line of tracks. And I get down there, I look at them immediately, I know they're bear tracks. And one of the more important things about determining bear tracks versus a Bigfoot track is the stride, is that you don't get those large strides with a line of bear track.
Yeah.
And it was clearly a bear overstep.
I was looking for, here it is. Another thing that has also been brought up was that, we place a lot of strength in the fact that we always say that Sasquatch prints have a mid-tarsal break. And it has been found that, back in 2013, 2015, that there was a series of studies done that had determined that 1 in 13 people have a type of mid-tarsal. They have a break, flexible or a floppy foot trait.
Yeah, they're flat-footed. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, it's not impossible to say, that could happen, especially on tracks that we see are smaller,
But the one thing that the difference there is that every human has a big toe. Every human has the ball of the foot, the hallux, and that will capture along with that break. So I often tell people if they see a ball of the foot or they see an arch, it's not a Bigfoot track. You can almost automatically rule it out. And I've seen this on media, on social media, where a guy's holding up, oh, look at our Bigfoot track, and it's like this big, and you can see that it's shaped like a human foot. Like, no.
Right. They have that, that kind of S shape to them, where you have that ball that rounds off and down and the arch,
Now you see that's interesting, and there's a big see people who misidentify. Like if you look at this particular chart, which is great, I have it too. Is the bear on the left? If you notice the cast, let's just take away those two side toes. You know how many people show up with a cast with that exact type of thing where you see that dip in the middle of the foot?
Yeah,
and they're saying that's the mid-tarsal break. It's not. Because the mid-tarsal break would not show up on a cast as a hollowed out section. It would show up as a bump in the cast.
Right.
Because what you're looking at is the exact opposite of the impression. So as that mid-tarsal break digs into the dirt, it pushes it out. So it would create the divot would actually be in the ground. So when you pour a cast, it wouldn't show up as a divot. It would show up the exact opposite, and it would be a bump.
Right. That's so interesting. I mean, it takes, I think, a lot of, experience, boots on the ground experience, these trackers and people to look at, no, it won't change, footprints and determine, fake and real, and to really analyze what those are, and trackers who are able to actually follow prints off into the woods for miles. I mean, I've seen some documentaries where, they've shown trackers trying to track humans. Actually, it was something I had watched about a rescue or something, and
Yes.
how they have a special stick and they are actually measuring strides and everything. And I didn't see anything out there, but they're tracking and seeing things that,
So I did a little bit of training with this gentleman who was originally from Portugal. And he goes around the United States and trains law enforcement agencies on tracking. And one of the most interesting things is I had a conversation with him. His name is Fernando Moriera. Great, great guy. And I was explaining to him that yeah, I tracked what I believe to be a Bigfoot down an embankment off of a sighting, and you could see where there were 5'9", 6-foot tree breaks going down. There was disturbance. There was very little track. The substrate was horrible, but you could see where there was movement. So you couldn't cast anything. You could see something large had moved through there.
right.
And I lost it when I hit the road. And he said to me, well, why didn't you track it on the road? How? He says, well, he goes, for example, we train people on hard surfaces to look at the disturbance of the dust or the dirt on the ground. And you may not get a footprint, but you will get a movement, and you'll see I'm like, I never thought of that. That was like ingenious. Saying, oh yeah, we've tracked people through garages. What? Just maddening stuff.
Wow. Yeah. And
But
it's a skill. I think it's a definite.
So I'll give you another great example why it's important to cast things sometimes. This is my favorite, the 4-day cast. But if you look at it, it doesn't look like the mid-tarsal was captured at all, right?
Oh yeah.
You don't really see a mid-tarsal. But if you hold it up, you may be able to see that. But the nice thing about a cast is you can feel it. And if you run your hand over it, you can feel a slight surface bump about midway, right about here. You can feel the surface bump. And it doesn't go all the way across. There's just a section of it that's a bump.
Oh.
And that's the mid-tarsus there, where it's a slight raising, but it's nothing, and that's why it just didn't capture. But it's there. It's present there. So that's the cool thing about casting stuff sometimes is you get to feel the track rather than just try to observe it with your eyes, because our eyes are very bad.
Right. Yeah. Let me see if I can find. Oops. It's not moving.
See, now you look at the cast on the right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've seen this cast before, but was there substrate that was harder in that line where people are thinking it may be a mid-tarsus? Because what I'm looking at here is something that had a bulge on the foot that caused that depression.
Oh, had some stepped on something there.
Right. Like it stepped on something. Exactly.
Yeah. That's okay. So one of the things that Fahrenbach did that we talked about is that he gathered all this information, and as he gathered all this statistical information, he put it into data form in graphs. And this one we're looking at right here, which is foot length. I think it's called a histogram. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I know
think so. Yeah.
I read that. Each one represented a short or a long trackway ladder, then sometimes extending over miles.
Right.
So you have your count on one side and your foot length in inches on the other side. The average foot length is 15.6 inches, and the range extends from 4 inches to 27 inches, which seems crazy to me. I don't.
Yeah.
That 27 inches seems.
Well, you know, the amazing thing what I find about, and I had to talk to Henner about this, is that the real takeaway was not that we could compare like sizes versus weight distribution versus, you know, length versus width or toe splay versus width and all that stuff. The important thing is it didn't matter if it was an authentic footprint or not, because his point was that if this was all a hoax, if all the prints were fake, they would be all over the map. What this chart represents is a bell curve. It goes up and it goes down. And that's the way it is for every living real creature on the planet, that it's a bell curve. And that had these all been faked or all hoaxed or all misidentifications, you would have something that went like a roller coaster. But instead you found a bell curve. And that represents a living, breathing species.
Right. And that's what's one of the points that I was going to make is that one of the criticisms that he had for this study was that he took all this information with the assumption that all those were real.
No, not true. Not true. He never assumed they were real or not. What he did was he took those in to see if you would get a traditional bell curve of what a living species is. That was the process. He goes, if these were fake, they would be all over the place. So he didn't care whether they were fake or not. He took them all because he needed to see if it came out to be a bell curve, because there are exceptions but the number of them, if you take 100 reports and say 10 of them are 100 tracks and 10 of them are fake, or even 20 of them are fake, but the rest of them are real, you're still going to get a bell curve. But if they're all fake, it would be all over the map, and it would look like a stock ticker almost. So that was the takeaway. He didn't really say I took them because they were legitimate or he thought they were legitimate. He took them all.
He took them all. And how many? Let me see. I think it was, I know I read it, but now I don't, I see it in front of me.
But
it
other thing,
was a substantial amount.
Yeah. The other thing too was that this bell curve convinced him that this was a real phenomenon.
That could be true because all of his charts showed that type of curve, from his foot width curve here to the heel, which he said was rarely measured, but he had 117 measurements contributed to this graph right here. And which was pretty amazing, because you have two that are set pretty solid there in the middle.
Right. And it didn't like I remember it didn't matter if he didn't have complete statistics for all of the prints. He just went in there and plugged the information that was given away and let the computers take over the rest, or in his math take over the rest. And he goes, if this was baloney in any aspect, but every single model he used, whether it be heel width or length or even stride, or it all came out to be bell curves.
What are you saying there? The mid-tarsal joint will sometimes give the appearance of both a high and a lowering of the surface. This is due to the joint flexing, the forward motion pushing material up and back, causing slope back.
Well, yeah, exactly. But the issue of it is when you cast something, you should not have a divot there. That divot, it would indicate that would be a bone or something that's pushing into the ground. Right. Or rather, you should, and that's on the surface. You shouldn't have a divot in the cast. Remember, a cast is an exact X-ray. It's almost like a mirror image of what's on the ground. So if you see a cast with a divot in it, that means that there was a protrusion where that mid-tarsal brake was, as opposed to it actually digging into the ground and pushing out.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that dramatic either. So that's another huge thing.
Yeah, some you can't see, until, like you said, holding it at that flat angle so you could see across it. Here's his step, the step length. This one was growth, ages. This one's kind of interesting because, people all make the assumption of how fast they grow, and there are juveniles, there are,
Absolutely.
smaller.
I saw one.
There has to be, there has to be small ones out there with smaller feet.
And primates do not grow fast. It's not like people think that primates grow as quick as, we don't know how they grow. Well, yeah, we do. Primates traditionally do not grow up fast. They don't in the chimpanzees. They do not in the Homo sapiens. They do not in the orangs. And they do not. They don't in the bonobos or the gorillas. They take years to grow into full size. Their full size and to reach adulthood. Now, yeah, there are some diverse ones, whereas chimpanzees may reach maturity in, I think, 12 years, but it varies. But it's not a quick process like a dog or a cat, where in 6-7 months that dog is almost full size, or that cat is almost full size, or that the lion can has this exponential growth spurt. We do. We have that exponential growth spurt, but usually that occurs at adolescence.
Yeah. And actually in this chart right here, I find it more compelling that he doesn't show a chart that shows them 15 feet or 20 feet, right, or, they seem very logical, the data, that Bigfoot would be in that 7 foot to 9 foot range. Right. And
you know what, you have to think about that. Could one possibly grow to be 9'5"? Well, yes, because we have that in Homo sapiens as well. I mean, we the tallest man I think was 8'10" or 8'6", something around that. I mean, you see him in the Guinness Book. Mm-hmm. But not knowing those statistics off the top of my head, I'm just paraphrasing here. But the tallest man was over 8 foot tall. It happens. Yeah. And conversely, we have the pygmies, who are very short. And they tend, but you take their blood, and guess what? It's the same DNA makeup as you or mine or everybody else's. So mm-hmm. there are different reasons. There's genetics that are involved that don't necessarily involve with they are, how should I say it? They're not mitochondrial DNA changes. They are like genial DNAs, like why our eyes are blue and some are brown and some are, but at the end of the day, we all have the same DNA makeup, but we have different genetic markers. Now, that's the word I was looking for. So they may have different genetic markers that may cause some of the variations in hair color or size or, the shape of their butt or, anything like that. They can have different genetic markers to do that. That
Right.
doesn't make them a different species.
And that's was another question that, I kind of stated earlier. Are we trying to prove that they have this higher morphological type of diversity? We do as humans. We
All
have,
primates. All
yeah, we
primates
have
do.
all those differences. So it's possible they do too. So, and we've talked about that with geographic type of
Right.
differences. In the South, are they smaller, or is the skunk ape smaller because it's warmer? They don't have more hair, are they bigger up in the North because they need to be bigger
And
to
then
survive?
you have Bergman's rule, which could mean that there
Right.
might be some environmental factors or nutritional factors that affect their size. I've often brought this up that your average South Korean is 5'9" tall. Your average North Korean is 5'7" tall. And they are from the same people, even their lineage. But the problem is that they're smaller in North Korea because they do not get as much nutrition as the South Koreans do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there are things like that fall into play. Am I saying, is it a straight Bergman's rule thing? Maybe not. Maybe there are some genetic markers that give them the propensity to be a little bit shorter or a little bit taller or brown haired or reddish brown haired or black haired or even a genetic malady like losing, not having a toe or we have conjoined twins and a lot of that exists within Homo sapiens. I'm sure it exists within other primates, although you don't hear about that too much. But then again, you look at as we've developed over the years, our genetic markers have changed because of our adaptations. That's why we're more apt to get food poisoning than per se a gorilla or more to the fact a chimpanzee. Because we cook our food, and over many generations of doing that, our genetic markers move to adapt to the way we live. That's why if you look at the one of the most amazing things I ever saw was the fox study, in a way to show how dogs got domesticated. Because if you think about it, all dogs, their forefathers were the wolves that still exist today. But why do they look so different? Well, it started in Russia, but they had started breeding the most passive of foxes with each other and the most vicious. And the most vicious ones remain vicious, and they got more vicious, and they maintain their colors, and they maintain their red and their black tinged tails and everything. But the strange thing about the ones that were passive, as they kept breeding them, all of a sudden strange things started happening. All of a sudden, they started getting ones with floppy ears. They started getting ones with bushier tails. And then they started getting color variations like white and black. And like, why is this happening? It's just genetic markers moving. They're becoming domesticated. So they make them, for some reason, their genetic markers move to make them look more appealing to a human being.
Yeah.
And it's the strange fact of how genetics can play into play is that a puppy is the only creature right now known on the earth that if you look at a puppy and it looks at you and you point, it looks to where you point. Why is that? It's in their genetic markers. But guess what can't do that? Wolves can't do it. Foxes can't do it. Chimpanzees can't do it. So
Yeah.
it's amazing how genetic moving of the genetic markers as things adapt over time and evolve. That's evolution. It really come up with some really weird things that like, wow, that's why they do that. It's because they're genetically predisposed to do that now. How does it know that? Still can't answer that. Scientists can't even answer that.
And, as us trying to change those genetic traits has deemed some, dog, canines and cats to miserable lives. They've,
Yeah.
pugs have their squashed faces. They have problems breathing. They, a lot of different types of animals that have been bred to these different traits because they were
Right.
popular or
This has a marker that we want to move over to this one, and before you know it,
yeah.
one of the most tragic ones is the ligers.
Oh, right.
Where they interbreed or somehow. I don't know if they do it in vitro. I'm not right, but there's actual examples where they have, mixed the DNA of a lion and a tiger together to produce what they call a liger. And there's huge health problems with them. They're big, they're slower, and they tend to die sooner because of heart issues. And we also know that too, that when we've done adaptations, that usually animals that get crossbred like that over, for the first short period of time until if they're able to reproduce on their own, that's fine. But if they're not, such as like the jackass, they don't have particularly long lifespans.
Strongest useful genetics. Wait, what? Let me
Absolutely.
see. The strongest, most useful genetics survive the test of time because of mere survival, and the evolutionary desire to survive. Only the strong survive.
And that's true in the wild, but it's not true with us. Well, for example, a liger would be terrible. It would not survive very well in the wild. Think of a pug running around in the wild. What do you think its lifespan's going to be? So it depends on interference, but in the natural world, yes, the stronger survive. Darwinism, only the stronger survive.
I mean, there's even cases of strong breeds like German Shepherds who end up getting hip dysplasia.
Yes.
Very bad.
Because they were bred that way.
Yeah.
It had to do with their breeding, that they liked that lower profile dog, especially lower in the back, gave them a little more opportunity to leap and jump and run faster. But it has this side effect of hip dysplasia.
Did you say that Hominin is in the house? Somebody? Let me see. Oh, he is. There he is. There's Patrick now.
Hello.
This show's for you, Patrick. In the beginning, I said that this show is based off of an email that you sent me a year ago that I just now decided to take upon, and brought Steve on here because he's done great tribute to Fahrenbach in the past.
And actually, in my book, the Bigfoot: A Scientific Examination, I do a whole case study on Henner Fahrenbach. So
last page is pictures. So now is your time for questions. Patrick, if you have any more questions. But, one of the other, let me move over this. So if we're talking about diversity, that could mean so many different things in line with a Sasquatch, right? And could actually explain why people are seeing so many different things. Do you think that could be one of the explanations why people maybe sometimes say it has a snout or a protruding face and could be misidentified as like a dogman, type entity or Rougarou or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there is enough genetic diversity in primates. And you just look at us, for example, because I somehow think that a Sasquatch would be a little closer to us on the chain, but that's only my opinion. But we have a lot of diversity, and we have a lot of disease or genetic birth defects that may cause some of those things as well.
Right.
And that's something else that we realize. Just because somebody says, "Oh, it's got a long," it seems to have a longer nose. That could easily be explained sometimes by a genetic birth defect.
Mm-hmm. That's
Hey,
always been my
and
feeling.
if you ever saw my Uncle Luigi, oh my. I always pick on my phony Uncle Luigi.
Point too is that it could be also come from inbreeding as well.
Absolutely. Again, genetic mutations. Yeah.
Right. So we have a bunch of explanations for,
Stuff like
what
that.
people seeing. Yeah. That makes sense.
But what's easier to explain for people, especially in social media? Is it all these list of explanations? Could it be diversity? Could it be a genetic mutation? Could it be a birth defect? No, it's easier to just say it's dogman or paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to put any of the non sequiturs after it.
So if we identified all these morphological differences, and they show, say, we say that the hair of a Bigfoot has an absence of the medulla, and we compare it to all these other things that are known animals, deer, chimpanzees, or the DNA sequencing remains inconclusive for definitely identifying a new primate species. Is it always going to go back to we need the body?
Well, that's a great question. And some people, and for some scientists, they want to see a body. They want to have a type specimen. Ultimately, that's how you remove all and any doubt. What I think will happen is if we come up with a genetic marker or a DNA sequence that makes sense, not angel DNA or anything like that. we have a genetic marker that makes sense. I think that will take more interest by the scientific community, and maybe even some. Now I have to sit back and think about this a little bit more, right? It's pretty hard to argue if we can sequence a DNA sequence of something that, number one, we have come so far in identifying genetic markers and identifying genetic lineage that they can say, well, this thing is not supposed to exist, but we can tell it goes back to the Australopithecines or the Paranthropus or the Homo genus or the, depending on wherever it may lead on. So that in of itself is going to say a lot. And then you look at some of the genetic markers, like in humans, we have the Fox P2 gene, which is our speech gene. It doesn't necessarily make us talk, but it gives us the articulation in our speech patterns to talk. So, they can look at these different genetic markers and these different genes and say, well, we can tell that it can do this. We can tell it can do that. We can tell it can't do this or that. So there's a lot of neat things you can find out. We would have to get the Sasquatch DNA sequence and then run it through 23andMe.
That would be crazy. We got some hits on there, huh?
Yeah, especially if you're finding you're related to some guy down south that claims he's part Sasquatch.
That's funny. What are you saying there, Jen? Jen says the body is a slippery slope. It'll get published. People say that's not what I saw, and then they'll want to harvest one of each kind. Not good for a limited species. You're right. That's not good.
Yeah, well, again, let's go back to the science skepticism there. Let's say they find a body and they typecast, and people start saying, yeah. What they're going to tell people is this. What do they say to people now if they see a Bigfoot? Oh, you saw a bear. So if people say, well, that's not what I saw. I saw something that was a little bit different. They're going to turn around. That's what you saw. So I don't really think they're going to buy that explanation necessarily off the shoot. There may be a few crackpots that say, oh, this is not what people are seeing. So just because we have a Bigfoot, maybe the dog man exists. Maybe that's what they're seeing. Yeah, so you're going to have people that go off the fringes like that, but it won't be from science.
What about the Melba Ketchums out there, who are going to extremes? They're getting money donated. People are donating money to this cause of not just finding Bigfoot now, but finding mermaids and
Dogman.
What else out there? Dogman.
And the rake and the goatman and the frogman of Ohio and the, mothman and the brown speckled parrot of New England,
Right.
I just made that one up, but I could have said the Adirondack barking spider, but that's a little rude. But here's the thing. There's a saying, I don't know where the hell it came from, but my father always used to tell me as a child, a fool and his money are soon parted. And it's going to amount to nothing regardless. It's going to amount to another, paper that's not going to amount to nothing. We already know she cannot do a DNA study, the way as is prescribed by science or the Texas Commission on Scientific court testimony. We know she can't follow those rules. So it doesn't matter what happens because it's going to be a mountain of nothingness. But as far as the people donating that, it's a shame they are, but a fool and his money are soon parted. That's all I can say about that. Is if they want to donate to that go right ahead, but you're wasting your money. I'm not mad about it. I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
Yeah.
And those are the type of people that want to hear anything anyway.
That is very true. And I was going to make that point that people who tend to just blindly follow or that it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter anyway because they will take whatever's out there and they digest it and just spew it right back out, the way it is without any controversy, without any research or any kind of checking things out. But
and the biggest thing there is if you cannot take criticism in a scientific study, you're not a scientist. And they sure do. The barking spiders, they're often heard, but never seen. And what also I heard about the barking spider too is you could often pick up their scent, but you can never find any tracks. So I don't know.
Sasquatch Wizard says paleontologists are discovering new fossils nearly monthly now, showing known hominin species like Denisovian, Neanderthal, Erectus, Heidelbergensis. Are we simply observing a variety of these species?
Well, not according to the scientists, because in each of these different types of fossils they're finding different bone structure. And when you deal with different bone structure, you're dealing with different DNA. So I'm not sure. I'm really not sure that they're finding a diverse group. What they're finding out is that Homo sapiens are a lot more diverse, and I think there was a lot more to the soup before they finally came out with Homo sapiens, and that's where we all ended up right here. I don't think the disappearance of Paranthropus was adequately explained because even scientists do not know why Paranthropus just dropped off. But I find it curious that a Paranthropus looks a lot like a Bigfoot, just smaller. So who knows? I know Gigano's been thrown up there as a possible relative, but until we have that DNA sequence, we do not know their lineage. And that's the beauty. That's why I say it'll make a difference, because when we first started saying, "Oh, DNA isn't gonna mean anything," because back in the day we used to say that, the only thing we could say is, "Oh, this is what the DNA is, and this is what it is compared to the other animals of the world." Now we can tear it apart and actually read that DNA to say, well, actually, it's related to this one and related to that one, and especially if they get mitochondrial DNA, which they can go back, centuries.
Right. And that's something that I have always thought about when we're looking at, our history and how we came about, is a lot of these were smaller beings. And where did we get these large size creatures from? Right? Where did that trait come from in the what we know, these known, these fossils that we do have? Where did that height come from, that weight come from? Because most of these were very small.
I'll pose a very more interesting question for you. Is that, doesn't it seem on the planet, if you look for the different periods of time, and I'm not an expert on the particulars of time, but when the dinosaurs didn't start off huge; they evolved into their size, and for a while there was giant mammals. There was the giant sloth, and there was dire wolves and the saber-toothed tigers, and they didn't start off large. They started off small, and they grew and they grew and they grew. And I think part of it is as a particular species becomes more dominant, they become larger. And if you think about that, look at the last couple of 100 years, just the last 250 years. For example, George Washington was 6'2". He was a giant back then because the average man was 5'7". Even I was considered tall back then, right? But now you fast forward, and the average person now is 6 foot tall, and it's not uncommon to see people in excess of 200 pounds a lot of times now. So over time, Homo sapiens are getting bigger too. So I don't know exactly, because I'm not a scientist, but I don't know exactly where that I'm an investigator. So my a lot of my stuff is based on observation. And that's what I've observed, is that we're getting bigger as a species. And what happens? Well, we see a common denominator. We're seeing an increase in heart disease and type 2 diabetes and all these other afflictions as we get bigger. Well, what happened to the giant mammals? They all died off. Well, why is that? Was it because of unforeseen medical problems that they had gotten as they continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger? Now, the dinosaurs, we know there was an asteroid. Or oh, look at that nice meteor. Goodbye. So that was their reason, but they never got to live out their full existence to see how they ended up. And of course the climate of the world changed dramatically after that asteroid hit. So we got really cold for a while, and we got warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer, and And, I know a lot of people talk about climate change and stuff, and this is not a political rant, but, it wouldn't surprise me, okay, if the planet's gotten a little warmer over 3 years. Remember where we were 3 million years ago? We were in tropics. The whole planet was in the tropics.
It's a cycle, weather's a cycle and we go through it. Just like the sun right now is going through that cycle and has that void in it right now, and people are freaking out about it. But we've had it before. It's just now there's more people learning about it because we have social media, and things just go out there like crazy. So
the head bone does not have cartilage. The head bone has plenty of cartilage. Your ears, your nose, that's all cartilage.
Yeah, that was interesting. What
And
was
actually, the whole paranthropus idea actually was originally introduced to me in a conversation I had with Cliff Barrickman.
Oh,
And the more I looked into it over the last several years, I'm like, oh, very interesting. I mean, Cliff and I have been talking for years. I mean, even before finding Bigfoot. So,
do you think that there are researchers now who, such as Barakman and others, okay, maybe even you, who know about, say, footprints, or let's just say footprints for this, but aren't telling us? You aren't telling us there's more to it. There's more evidence that maybe is being held back. Maybe Barakman knows more about footprints, but doesn't want to divulge any information to prevent hoaxing. Do you think that's a thing?
I can only speak for myself. And after writing all the books I have and doing all the podcasts I have, I'm never afraid to put out what I know, because understand that us as honest people and honest researchers, we absorb this stuff. The hoaxers and the other folks, they do, unless they're really trying to put a diabolical one. But there are features on footprints. No matter how hard if you try to fake them, they will look fake. And the same thing with, vocals, the same thing with how they look and stuff like that. And I try not to hold anything back. Do I have to hold back certain things at times because of operational security or a potential for, furthering the claim up the food chain? Yes, absolutely. Like I'm holding some things back about audio that's going to blow some people's mind. And
right. We still haven't heard about that.
I'm working on it. Science takes time and patience. And I don't want to come out saying something half-assed. That's just me. And I try to have my bases covered as much as I can.
So, hold on, I'm trying to find oops. Dang it. Okay, I found it. Okay, so let's move on a little bit to what we have physically, right? In the tracks, the actual physical tracks. And we've got many trackways that have come about, including like the London trackway that I'm showing here. And in the beginning, Barakman was very excited about it and researched it and did his little paper on it. But then later, he said that it was probably hoaxed. This was back in 2012, and there was actually two sets, right? They say there's two sets of London tracks, because there was another one that came after that seemed more deemable.
My only interesting point is that, he doesn't seem definite that they were hoaxed. And the fact that did anybody ever come forward about the trackway and said, "Oh, I did it"?
No, not that I know of.
And that I have a huge problem with, because somebody that does something necessarily to that effect, is that one of the prints of the trackway?
Yeah, that's one of them.
I'm not so impressed with the toes of that necessarily. And let me explain to you why. How do people describe Bigfoot hands or handprints? Very long fingered.
Yeah.
Right? So chances are, if you have long digits, you have long metatarsals. So when I see stubby toes like that, so close, it kind of puts that in question, which was the big problem with the Ray Wallace stompers I saw. If I saw the Blue Ridge trackway, the John Green, I would have said those are fake. It would have been just like that. They don't look natural to me. Now this one, again, it's a far off shot. And what happens is when people look at a picture of a track, and let's look at this one. And I know you can't blow this up, but what is lacking, from what I can see, what's lacking any type of motion?
Exactly. And it's wet. It looks like a wet track. So wouldn't have there been push off, or deepness in those toes.
And again, I have to caveat that we're not there. And right now I'm looking at a picture that's about the size, about 5 times the size of a postage stamp. So it's very difficult to look at every single detail of that photo from where I'm looking at it. But, off the shoot, that's what that would be my concerns off the shoot. I wouldn't, you don't label something a hoax, or you don't label something that without really closely looking at it. And I don't see any push off. It looks like a stomp. It's hard to say because the toe, especially like what appears to be the big toe, does appear to be filled up with water a bit, and so does the heel, which may indicate a little more pressure. But let's also think about it. If that was a stomper, you would have pressure on the heel and the very front of the toes as well. Even though it may not bend, you're still gonna have this flat type of punk. Right? You're still gonna have that type of lift. And what really concerns me is when I usually see, the toe, like the cast is curved downward, meaning that the toe is kind of really dug in to push off on that. And that would be stomper indicative, because a stomper doesn't have any flexibility. What we should see in a lot of these tracks is sometimes toes that don't capture very well, or toes that don't capture at all. Because that would indicate that it's not a stomper, because if it's a stomper, as you go down and back up, that's going to create, pressure points on the far ends of the track. Just think about it. If I use this to make Bigfoot tracks, it's going to go bump, bump, bump. So your deep points are going to be here and here.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a flexible foot, it's going to come down, bend, come back up, bend. Right? So, and that was the other neat thing, is you don't see all the digits in this cast capturing.
One,
there's 5.
Well, there's also something here. 3, 4, something, and then something here.
Right. But then again, depending on a couple of other things too, is where is the foot positioned on the stomper? See, there's a number of different things. I'm not saying this is a stomper, but I would have concern, why are the toes so deep and not the middle of the foot, which is where most of your flexibility, having a mid-tarsal break and mid-foot flexibility, why is that not the deepest part of the track.
Right. It also has this weird curve down at the heel, like double or triple, 1, 2, almost 3.
Very indicative of a pressure straight down.
Yeah.
Creates the wave ripple. And it may have been done in wet. But then again, that could have been with a natural foot too. So who, without really being there and looking at it inch by inch and getting a good look at seeing if there's some crushed vegetation, and which could occur from a stamp or two. But seeing any type of general direction, some kick off or maybe some push off. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Let's put this one back. All right. Because, again, you now take the example. I don't have it up here. I could probably get it up fast, but the Skookum track, we they set it up to get a picture of a Sasquatch going to get those apples or whatever they put in the middle of this bog, and didn't get anything, but they have a picture of a Bigfoot that sat down in this bog, and they casted it, and they say they see the leg and then heel dug in and all of this stuff in regards to that Skookum cast. What's your opinion on that? Let me see if I can find it.
Well, you see, I know a little more about the Skookum cast than most, because I had a really long discussion with Jeff Meldrum about that. And I said, what about that? Now, let's put aside the fact that it was looked at by Dr. Esteban Sarmiento.
Yes.
And Dr. Darius Swindler. People forget about him. He also looked at it. And he says, here's the problem. A lot of people will claim that's an elk wallow or kind of an elk bedded down. The problem with that is that the first thing an elk does when it gets up, it relieves itself. And there was no droppings at all.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no evidence that there was an elk there. Or an elk had laid there, because it's missing the droppings it does. And I've seen deer do it. I've seen deer get up and, so.
Do they do it every time? Do they,
Yeah. It's a natural function. You just let loose.
I mean, I've gone to plenty of deer farms. I don't see that. I don't see where it would be a constant thing. Number one, we don't know how long he was there or sitting there or whatever, getting the food or what have you.
Point taken. But I don't know. I'm sitting there in judgment of, 3 different scientists that looked at it, and actually a few more.
Yeah.
That couldn't answer what that was, and definitely concluded that this is not an elk wallow because of that one particular tendon that they had found in the mud, that it did not represent anything that an elk biologically would, and that was like an Achilles tendon and a heel. That's what they found in it. So I mean, I don't know. It's very curious. What does it prove? Nothing. So in the scope of things, I'm not going to. They very well could be a good piece of evidence, but if you ever ask me, that's not the greatest piece of evidence out there.
Right. Hold on one second. Was there any type of dermal ridges or anything found on it?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay. Because sometimes I swear I see stuff and then I look at it again and I see nothing. I don't see.
It's very hard to determine, because it's laying down, and Could it be hair? Could it be dermoglyphics? Don't know. Like I said, this was taken in 94, I believe.
That was further back than I even thought.
Right? Yeah, it was before my time, even. Because Legend Meets Science, that came out in what, 96? And that was featured on Legend Meets Science. As was Henner's study, as was the Memorial Day footage, as was the Freeman footage, as was the Patterson-Gimlin footage.
Yeah.
They took all the big ones.
Mm.
So that was all way before even before my time.
Yeah.
Not by much, but
I think you find that it's a pretty 50-50, half it's nothing and half it's something, kind of like the same way we see the Patterson-Gimlin. There'll always be the separation between the two sides of it's real or it's not real. And that's just the way I think it's going to go for a while. Pretty interesting, though. I think that they didn't get any footage, even though they had cameras out there.
Yeah. Right. And I'm not even, and mind you, that's what I was told by Dr. Meldrum. So I can't necessarily say that in my own experiences because I really haven't watched too many deer in my day. Usually they're running away from me.
Yeah.
But it is very interesting. I do have a lot of deer that come down into my yard over the year. And they don't lay down here. And I find very little evidence of deer droppings. So I don't know. Is it something they do when they get up or when they take a few steps after getting up? Or I don't know.
Well, I know they process their food very, what's the word? They take everything, they extract everything out of that, that they possibly can, and they only excrete the absolute leftovers of that. So could it be possible that maybe in the wintertime, they don't excrete as much because they're holding back even more, or in the summer, maybe they do more because they have more food available.
I will tell you this. Funny story, my funny deer story, as I remember years ago, I was set up on a former law enforcement officer who was doing a surveillance on a former law enforcement officer. He actually was a current law enforcement, but he was shilling the workman's compensation system. So I had gotten video of him of working on a boat and moving around his boat, and he was claiming that he can't work because his ankle is broken and still has pain, but he can jump up and down off his boat 5 times. And it was a very upscale neighborhood per se, and I was staying down maybe about a quarter mile down the road just watching where he was coming out of because I had spent enough time on the street. And in front of me, there was this big mansion-like house in front of a hill that had a nice driveway and a stone gate. There was no gate, but a stone arch leading up into there. And all around all around the front of the stone gate was these beautiful flowers of all sorts of types that, they spent some money to put flowers out there. And I'm sitting there one day, and I'm just sitting there waiting for this guy to come out. And I look, and there's a deer wiping out every single flower on the thing. And I'm like,
oh my God.
When that deer left, it looked like a bunch of just beat up, weeded shrubs just because all the flowers were gone. And he was looking around, watching cars go by.
Oh my gosh, that sounds familiar. A friend of mine has a cabin up in the mountains, and he has a little flower bed right underneath his window of his cabin, and it's his Airbnb. And he got an alert on his camera phone thing, and he's looking, and it's this elk eating all his flowers in that bed underneath the window. Big old elk just helping himself. I go, well, you put it right underneath. It's perfect. It's like a trough for you.
Those ungulates love the flowers. They're delicious.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, who knows when it comes to the Skookum cast? Wasn't there, wasn't even in research at the time. I know that there are a lot of respected researchers like Dr. Leroy Fish, who is also there. He was there. Dr. Meldrum. Again, Sarmiento. I think John Wojanzinski took a look at it too as well, and he is another field I think he's a biologist.
That's the other one I was thinking about earlier. Yeah.
You know, and then you had that's when you were introduced to Esteban Sarmiento and Darius Swindler, who were primatologists. I'm not sure if Darius Swindler he was either an anthropologist or a zoologist. Sarmiento, of course, is a primatologist. And then they all looked at it and felt fairly convinced that it was not an elk. So, and then there was a great researcher by the name of Rick Knoll, who was out there, who did a lot of photography stuff. And they were all pretty convinced that what they had was legitimate. So who am I to say? I just don't know. I wasn't there. And sometimes you have to pull that card, like, I wasn't there. I couldn't tell you. I can sit there and look at pictures all day and make all kinds of formulations, but I wasn't there. That's the bottom line.
So where are the tracks leading to the cast and away from the cast?
I have no idea. They believed it had crawled out to the sample. That it actually kind of crawled and then, reached over and started grabbing the apples and like that. I didn't just kind of walk out there and just plop down. So that was their explanation. But who knows? Who knows? I wasn't there. Were there tracks? Were there partial tracks? Were there elk tracks? Don't know. Couldn't answer any of that. So you're kind of asking the investigator to base his investigation or his answer on something that I obviously can't because I don't have enough information.
Right. We haven't seen, or they didn't show, as far as I know, they didn't show the area surrounding. Did they?
There was an article many, many years ago. I saw pictures and there was a video where I saw the actual process going on, but I don't know where that went over time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was years ago. I mean, that was the days of message boards and Yahoo groups.
Right. That would be
even the pre-forum days.
Any questions out there in the chat? I see you guys just chatting it up out there. Let me see. Any questions? More to cud chew than to sleep. No, I think they're kind of talking on their own. Oh, thank you so much. Their sandwich. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Matter of fact, I will see what I can do here and give some memberships to some folks. There we go. There. Thank you again. And that's about all I had about in regards to, the numbers. And I'm totally for that. I'm totally for this type of research, the data-based research. And just, it may show something and it may not, but the more we do it, I think in the long run, it all would come together, as, I don't know, reality, truth, part of the big picture. For sure.
The big thing with Henner was that he showed all these bell curves with all the data he had picked up. meaning
Yeah.
that that has the tendency to mean that we're looking at a living, breathing population rather than just malarkey and fantasy.
So there's one more question that this is a question straight from Relicommon Patrick. He asked, can non-experts add any value?
Absolutely.
And I believe that too.
What are non-experts? See, that the term expert in of itself is an ambiguous term. See, to John Q. Public, I might be considered an expert. To you and me, we're just colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made this a number of times. Like my plumbing breaks, I have a bust pipe. I call the expert, I call a plumber. But if that plumber goes to a plumbing convention, is he an expert or is he a colleague? So the term expert is just a frame of reference. Mm-hmm. So is a person a non-expert? Well, what if a person has looked at tracks or tracks for the last 25 years, or has looked at photographs for the last 20 years, or has analyzed audio or sound for all these number of years? Which I've done all, I've done all, and especially video, even before then, because I've been analyzing video for crime since the dinosaurs walked the earth, I think. But does that necessarily make me an expert necessarily? Well, to some people, yes. To other people, no. So when you say, does an non-expert have it's hard to say. It depends on what they're looking at. Like if you're asking me about the genetic makeup of the kinkajou, I would have no idea, right?
Right.
Ask me some foot morphology of a Sasquatch. I'm likely to be an expert if you know nothing about that. However, if you were to ask an anthropologist like the late Dr. Meldrum, he would be miles over me. Right. So there's different levels of expertise. There's, and a non-expert, everybody generally is an expert in something from a point of view.
They have something to contribute. I really like the term citizen scientists. And I think that because of that, we all have something to bring to the table, whether, you think you don't or not. It's all those questions that, help bring on even more questions and smarter questions.
But we have to be careful using that term citizen scientist, because we find that a lot of so-called proclaimed citizen scientists don't use the scientific method at all.
Right.
So, or unfamiliar with what science is.
Right.
It's
true.
So it's tough. That's why I never call myself a citizen scientist. I always call myself an investigator. My job is to collect the data, collect the information, collect the intelligence, and then I'll pass it off to a scientist and let them figure out what it is.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we're going to get another Jeffrey Meldrum, Fahrenbach, Krantz in the community again?
Absolutely. It'll happen. May not be tomorrow, may not be next week or next month or next year, but it'll happen. It will happen. It always has. I mean, when Grover passed away, people thought, well, and then Jeff just kind of filled right in because Jeff had an interest. And I'm sure there's some other folks that are scientists out there, you know, that may all of a sudden hop in and become the next Meldrum.
Well, we look forward for that for sure. Let me see. Any other questions? We're probably going to bring this one to a close so that Steve can get ready for his show. And let me bring up my thing here. Anybody? Nope. Okay. I'm going to bring it to a close. So Dr. Henner Fahrenbach's work sits in a rare space in Bigfoot research, right between belief and biology. On one hand, his statistical findings raise serious questions, normal distribution curves, consistent scaling issues, long-term data trends are exactly what scientists expect to see in real animal populations. Those patterns don't automatically prove Sasquatch exists, but they also don't behave like pure chaos or mass hoaxing. On the other hand, numbers alone don't cross the final scientific threshold without a body, a fossil, or confirmed DNA. Even the most elegant statistics remain suggestive, not conclusive. And that's where intellectual honesty matters the most. Fahrenbach's work reminds us of something important, that Bigfoot research doesn't fail because people ask questions. It fails when people stop asking good ones. Data is not belief, patterns are not proof, but dismissing careful analysis just because the subject is controversial, that's not science either. Here on Sasquatch Secrets, we don't tell you what to think. We invite you to think deeper. And maybe the real mystery isn't whether Sasquatch exists, but how close we're willing to look before deciding the answers. Many thanks to Steve Culls for coming on tonight. And remember to head on over to Squatch DTV after this, where Steve and Chris have a great show planned for you tonight. And until the next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep asking better questions. See you guys in the next chat. Thank you. Good night, everybody.